this podcast, you'll find interviews with high-performing, successful individuals in life sciences. On a weekly basis, we cover their proven methods, principles, strategies, and mindsets to implement new technologies that scale to meet the needs of people in our world.
Today, I'd like to welcome to the podcast Joe Bagan. Joe's currently the founder and CEO of Stack Pharma, a highly automated 503B outsourcing entity. Joe was previously founder, CEO, and then chairman of Sharklet Technology until it was acquired in 2017 by a Chinese private equity firm specializing in biotechnology. Joe's also led genomic data gathering and analytical efforts for a cancer consortium, Orion, founded and developed an antimicrobial peptide antibiotic, and as an advisor to drug company and medical device companies through the Colorado University Innovation Program, SPARK. Joe brings more than 25 years of strategic leadership and executive management experience. He's also a co-founder of RevGen Incorporated, a consultancy focused on data analytics, business intelligence systems, and development of applications for companies of all sizes. Before his work in life sciences, Joe held a number of executive positions in the telecommunications, cable TV, and media industries. These include COO of Clear Channel Outdoor, SVP of Adelphia Communications in the Southeast region of the United States, CAO at Adelphia, and CFO at Ricochet Wireless Network. Joe has also led large organizations as he served in various executive capacities AT&T Broadband from 2000 to 2003. Prior to AT&T, Joe was a partner at Arthur Andersen. Joe led the Southwestern United States consulting practice in telecommunications and media. Joe graduated from the University of Denver in 1988 with both a BSA-CC and an MSA-CC. So today I'd like to welcome to the podcast Joe Bagan. Joe, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Don. Happy to be here.
Yeah, I've looked quite a bit at your past, and I know that right now you're at Stack Pharma, so I'm wanting to just explore a little bit of your past and tell us a little bit about you.
Yeah, you bet. So I'm a Denver native and born in Denver at St. Joe's Hospital, a different St. Joe's Hospital than the one today, but near it. And one thing that's interesting about me is not only have I lived here all my life, both my parents were born here in Denver, and I grew up in an industrial neighborhood we all know as Globeville, which very few Denverites really know where that is. But those that have been around a long time do and understand what part of the city I grew up in. Happy to be a Denver native.
Thank you so much for that. And so I guess the next thing I'd like to explore a little bit about is, so what is Stack and what is it that you're doing? What are you working on?
Yeah, so Stack is not only our namesake, but our mission as well. It stands for safety, transparency, availability, and quality. And we make sterile injectable products for hospital and healthcare systems. So all of our products are used in operating room, ICU, ER. They're the sterile injectables that put you to sleep, wake you up, drop your blood pressure, raise your blood pressure. They're the things that take your heartbeat down, raise your heartbeat. They're all the things you'd need during either a surgical procedure or any other procedure where you're going to put something directly into the body. We don't do any solid dose work here. So nothing goes through the mouth coming out of our facility. It's all going through the vein, and usually through an intravenous solution dripped into the person. Common anesthesia drugs, we do those. Common pain drugs, we do those. The key, though, is they're all used in hospitals. We don't sell anything to the general public. We can fill prescriptions here, but we don't. And really, our customers are just hospitals and healthcare systems.
Okay. And then I guess, how does the process work for you? How does a product go from being ready to be put in injectable to finally working with your company? How does that work?
Yeah, so it's a very difficult process. We follow an FDA guidance and guideline called Current Good Manufacturing Procedures. Some people say process, but CGMP is the acronym we all understand. And what that is, it's somewhat of an interpretive standard. It follows parts 210 and 211 of the Code of the Federal Register. And so there are some things that are specific in there, but there are other things that say you must monitor your environment to make sure that it's sterile. Well, it's up to us then to prove that we adequately monitor our environment when the FDA comes in to inspect us. So the way we go from idea to product is we talk to hospitals about what they need. We talk to them about the kinds of drug products they need and the concentration and fill volumes they need. And then we produce them in a sterile way, according to that CGMP standard. And boy, is that easy to say and hard to do. There aren't a lot of us in the United States that go down this path. And by the way, most of the drugs we do are drugs that have been around a long time. They're your anesthesia drugs, as I said earlier, your pain drugs. They're things like morphine in a solution. Well, morphine's been around since the Civil War. The FDA really approves my process of getting that right and getting it sterile. They're not really approving my drug, morphine, because it's been around so long. And everybody in the healthcare system knows what morphine does. They know how to use it. They know what not to use it with. They know the side effects. So we live in a world of what are called compound drugs, which are drugs that have a different regulatory category, but they're commonly used in hospital and healthcare settings for patients. So that's now this whole stack notion. That really came from interviewing hospitals and their pharmacies and pharmacists and talking to them about what do you need out of a partner who produces these drugs for you. The value proposition I give them is that I can do these things sterile. I can do them and give them a long date for them to use them by and take that burden off of them and their hospital pharmacy and put it in my facility to do it under that CGMP moniker, which is a good thing. It's a good thing for us. It's a good thing for patients. It's a good thing for hospitals. So that's a little bit about how all that comes together.
So if I understand you correctly, then the drug companies are selling, let's just say, morphine to the hospital. You're more or less putting it in a usable form for the hospital to then actually use it on their patients. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And I can start with other FDA-approved products. I can purchase vials of morphine and pool them into a bag and then maybe dilute it if a hospital wants a diluted concentration of it, and then put it in a syringe if they want it in a ready-to-use syringe. And as long as I do that correctly and under the CGMP standards, then I can give it a dating that the hospital is very interested in. And it really helps them out from a smooth and efficient operation perspective because they're not having to run down to the hospital pharmacy and open up vials and produce drug products. And hospitals don't usually operate according to the CGMP standard. That's the standard that drug and pharmaceutical companies operate by. And it's a better standard, frankly. And the hospitals we work with, they know that. And so a lot of the thought leaders in the hospital systems today, they want to work with facilities like ours because we're held to a higher standard of how to produce a sterile product.
I mean, I would imagine in most hospitals today, their focus is a lot more on, given the time that we're doing this interview, on COVID and caring for patients that are going through whatever it is that they're going through versus trying to get something ready for consumption as well.
And given the basic origin or use of our drugs that we produce here, there's not a whole lot of specialty thinking skill set going on with the drug. For example, morphine. Another popular one we do is hydromorphone. That's also another pain drug. We do midazolam, which is a sedative type drug. And a hospital might use 100 of those a day. Maybe not now with COVID going on. Not all hospitals are back to 100% of what they were before COVID, but they're using a lot of these drugs. So it really benefits them if I can put them in a ready to use format. They don't have to open up a vial or even distribute vials throughout the hospital. Some of these are controlled substances, and it's better if it's in a single dose ready to use syringe than shipping vials out through the hospital and trying to make sure those are secured and watched out for. That adds a lot of process and procedure to a hospital that may not be super value added to our healthcare.
Okay. And how long has STAC been around?
So we started the plan to build this facility that I'm in right now about 2.5 years ago. And we spent our first 6 months doing nothing but design work, trying to figure out, hey, physically, how are we going to lay our facility out to meet the CGMP standard? There's some physical requirements associated with that standard. And so after that 6-month period, we then went into more of an aggressive design and build mode. About 3 months of buying and procuring all of the materials that we're going to use in our build. We hired Visant, which is a big pharmaceutical consulting firm in the U.S. to help us with our design and think that through. Another local group called Vista Engineering helped us, and then Turner Construction did our build. Those three groups really helped us think through what it is we were going to do and how we were going to build it. Once that started to roll, it was surprisingly quick. We built the facility in 6 to 8 months, and then Vista Engineering and some others helped us qualify it and get it ready for the CGMP standard. That probably took another 6 months. And so between all of that, it took about 2.5 years to get to a point where we could produce a commercial product and have it ready for sale.
That's excellent. And so I'm going to switch gears a little bit because I find your background and your career extremely interesting as somebody that has been a CEO of multiple companies, gone through this journey a couple of different times. The one quote that always sticks in my head for entrepreneurs is Elon Musk oftentimes will say that being an entrepreneur is a bit like chewing glass and looking into the abyss. And I think there's an added piece to that whenever you get to life science companies, because oftentimes we face not only the challenges of creating a product, but also you have the regulatory challenges, the funding challenges. There are a lot of different things that you go through, and to know that you've wantingly tried this or doing this 4 times, it just it really interests me. So I guess tell me a little bit about the companies that you've worked on before and what were their products in relationship to what you're doing now, or were they related?
Yeah, given how many times I've done this, I'm surprised your first question wasn't, what's wrong with you, Joe?
People often say that about me, so I would never say that ever about a guest, ever.
It is hard, and I don't use Elon's quote, but I have my own, and I tell people when I'm hiring them into a startup, I say this is a series of near-death experiences. That's what this is. So on Tuesday, you're worth $1 billion and your company has just hit a milestone like none other. And then Friday, the reality of making payroll sets in. And somewhere in between, you've got to get up every day and come in and make sure that all of that still happens. And people have asked me before, what's the secret sauce there? Was it your strategy? And did you think this through carefully for years and then jump in? And I look at them and I say, it's none of that. It's none of that. What it is, it's persistence. It's never, ever quitting. And that is the hardest part of these entrepreneurial endeavors. And because there does come a time, and one of the 4 that I've done, there did come a time where we were trying to do a therapeutic drug, an antimicrobial drug, And for use in the human body, we want to defeat Acinetobacter baumannii, which is an infectious bacteria. And we had a drug candidate to do it. And boy, did it work well in culture plates, in human cell lines on the desktop, in mouse. But then we took it to a rat model, and suddenly we couldn't get enough in there before we started seeing cellular damage to the patient, so to speak, in this case, a rat. Killed the bacteria perfectly. But that one, we got to a point where we're like, we can't dose enough here to kill the bacteria and keep it safe. And we had to quit. That was the only one of the 4 that I've done where we got to a point where we're like, you know what? Science just doesn't support us here, and we need to stop. The other 3 that I've done, they were very difficult journeys. The Sharklet company, I actually started that in Gainesville, Florida, licensed technology out of the University of Florida. And I moved it here early on to Denver. One of the reasons was because of the whole bioscience development here at the Anschutz campus. So we were one of the first tenants in one of their first buildings, and there were maybe 5,000 people coming out to that whole campus where Children's Hospital and University of Colorado Health and the CU Medicine School is today. There are like 30,000 people coming to work on that campus every day now. There's 2 giant hospitals there. There's a Veterans Administration hospital now. UC Health has a hospital. Children's of Colorado has their main campus hospital. So I guess there's 3 giant hospitals there now. And the medicine school, the School of Medicine, the School of Pharmacy, they're all there. And then there are 3 or 4 bioscience incubators there now. So I wanted to be a part of that. I wanted to see that grow. I wanted to be part of the Colorado bioscience community from Anschutz campus all the way into Boulder, Colorado. And all of that was attractive to me. And so we brought it here and started it here. Or I should say, grew it up here. Stack, though, we started here. We design, build, everything from day one has been here in Denver, Colorado. And I think me and Mark Speaker, my associate, we're one of the few groups who've actually built a company, sold that company, and then started another company in the same ecosystem we sold the last one. A lot of times that doesn't happen. A company will get merged, it'll move, somebody else takes it over. So it's pretty rare that happens. And he and I are both pretty proud of the fact that we've done that here in Denver.
And then, so I guess so you've mentioned Stack and you've talked about Sharklet. So you have RevGen and then BioAmps. Do you want to tell us what were those 2 companies?
Yeah, so BioAmps was the one I referred to earlier where we had to quit. We were looking to make a drug product to defeat a bacteria. And so RevGen, I helped found from a capitalization perspective. I was their chairman of their board, served on their board for a lot of years, and really helped them get off the ground and get running. And that was a collection of ex-Arthur Andersen people that I worked with early in my career who wanted to build an interesting business intelligence and data sciences company. And so that's gone from 4 of us in a room talking about what we ought to do to 130 people now here in Denver, Colorado. I still serve on their board and still advise that company. And then Sharklet was antimicrobial texture. We didn't use any chemistry, but we stopped bacteria from adhering and growing onto the surface of short-term indwelling devices, which is important because it stops infection from happening. We grew that one up here in the Denver bioscience community. And then the 4th was Stack, which is where I'm at now.
Yeah, and for anybody that hasn't listened to the Ethan Mann episode where we go into Sharklet and we talk a lot about some of the things that he did there as well, Ethan also provides some additional perspective with regards to Sharklet, which is one of the next questions that I'd like to tie back between Stack and Sharklet now. So were there things that you took away from Sharklet that you brought to Stack that you said, hey, look, I definitely want to replicate this going forward in my next company?
The one thing I took away from it was I would call it more intestinal fortitude for doing a life sciences business. Honestly, we're so overregulated in small business in general. The data all shows the number of startups are going down, and it's concerning to me. In life science, doubly. We do have the safest drug supply chain in the world, safest medical devices in the world, but I do worry that we're going to give away innovation in the long run, and we sacrifice innovation for regulation, and there is a trade-off there. There definitely is a trade-off there. And even outside of the life sciences regulation, there's so many regulations now around payroll and employing people and how all that's done. It really, I struggle as an entrepreneur to watch it happen and then think, okay, who's coming behind me that are also going to do startups? And I see fewer and fewer, probably because it's all very scary and costly to go through. It costs a lot more to do these kinds of startups anymore and be compliant. And of course, you have to be compliant. So that's table stakes. I do worry about that. I took away from my past experiences how to manage through that. And it's difficult, very difficult. I'm not sure I could codify it and sit down and write, here's what anyone else needs to do. You almost just have to go through it. And like I said earlier, no matter what's in front of you, just persist. Do not quit. That's the single most important thing to do. Unless it's obvious, you have to. The science tells you are on the wrong path. Give up. And that, but bioamps that happened. Here, that's not going to happen. And Sharklet, that didn't happen. We had good science backing our product.
Yeah, it's a good example, especially as you look right now, people are trying to develop COVID vaccines, and Johnson & Johnson just announced today that they were pausing their vaccine. And I instantly start getting text messages from people, hey, should we be concerned? Again, I come back to one thing that you just said. One of the safest sort of drug pipelines in the world is in the U.S. And certainly our regulations keep us safe. And whenever you see routinely that, yes, they paused it here, but they're continuing the development of a vaccine in Europe, same company, just continuing in a different country, it kind of points to where the issue is. It's in the regulatory challenges for right now. And who knows, maybe we'll see something change based on some of this as well. So
yeah. And look, when you see that happen, that's actually a good thing. What Johnson & Johnson has hundreds of products that go through the FDA and 10 other regulatory agencies. They are not going to risk poor science at the altar of speed and sacrifice on safety. So when that happens, I do wonder sometimes, do you stop a trial with one hit in a 30,000 person trial? But there's math behind that too. And they do have to stop and say, okay, what specifically happened there? GSK out of the UK also had that happen recently. And I think their phase 3 trial is back on track now. So when I see that happen, to me, that's a good thing. That means it's working. The process is working. People are stopping and saying, okay, is there something unique here that we really need to know about? Or was this circumstantial? Was the person already sick? And we didn't pick that up? Did something else happen in their life that caused a comorbidity? Investigate is essentially what that is. And if you investigate it right and you come to the right answer, you'll move along. And so that's okay. I'm okay with all that. And I think that just means it's all working.
Yeah, and I think both, at least for AstraZeneca and Johnson, they were using the adenovirus to deliver the payload as well. They were based on some of the similar technology, and who knows what actually led to it. I definitely don't know the details. I just know from an outsider, the things that you can gather and grasp, it looks like we'll be back on track again here shortly. So counter to that first question that I had, is there anything that you did at Sharklet that you really don't want to replicate at Stack, that you said, hey, look, I just want to make sure coming into this new organization, I don't want to repeat that same thing that I had happen?
Probably the one thing I wish we did a little bit differently at Sharklet would probably have been to raise more money earlier and go a little faster. We sort of, took a long time to get that product to a point and the science to a point where a company was interested in acquiring it. And eventually that did happen. But if I took that away, that would be the one thing I wish I did a little bit differently.
Okay. And so I guess the other part that I would ask you about, given your overall background, and you mentioned this just a little bit ago, with your broad outside of life sciences, do you feel like that gave you some better experiences now as an entrepreneur, that you can look at some of these opportunities maybe differently than somebody that's, spent their career, let's say, in life sciences?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Exposure to CGMP is a standard in med device too. So exposure to that at Sharklet, and it's harder under sterile aseptic creation of drug than it is under device, but it's hard, really hard under both. That did give me, you got to be able to sleep at night, and understanding where the science is taking you and understanding where the regulatory environment is taking you. That was key under Sharklet to bring to Stack, and I have brought that to Stack. So that was helpful. It also, what I took away from that is here at Stack, I hire people in our quality group with big pharma experience. So they come out of Schering-Plough, Novartis Sandoz, Pfizer Hospira. Those are, I get those people because I know you don't mess around with the quality standards. So that's been helpful too.
Absolutely. Not unless you want to go through a lot more pain on the regulatory side, which I don't think many people would want to live through.
Right. So. You go through a really bad day. Yeah.
All right. So I asked the same 3 questions of everybody that comes onto the podcast, and I'll start with the first one for you. So what inspires you?
Creating businesses and creating jobs and solving intractable problems. That inspires me. It really does. That's how I get up and come in every day and do what I do, which is really hard. But I really like it. At the end of the day, I've been a Fortune 500 officer, and I've been one of 2 people in a small business startup. And I really like building the company and creating the company and seeing that all come together and putting the culture in place. That really gets me going and gets me into work every day.
Excellent. What concerns you?
As I said earlier, I really think we need to look hard at how many, at Stack right now, there's probably 10 different big regulatory agencies I have to deal with. And I really do worry about what does that mean for the entrepreneurial health of America. And it's a bigger macro issue than just here, but it's something we need to pay attention to because there are trade-offs in all of that. And I think anytime more regulation sounds good, somebody should say, what are the trade-offs? What are the unintended consequences? Are we sure we're going to get what we want out of that? That concerns me.
And what excites you?
You could see as we're on a Zoom call here, you probably could see my expressions. Building the business excites me. Making it bigger, adding people, adding customers, that's all a lot of fun. And you do have roller coaster days or weeks. In fact, some days we call it chutes and ladders. Was today a ladder day or a chute day? And you're going to have your fair share of chute days. That it comes with the territory. You have to be okay with that. And then you have your ladder days, and you celebrate that you're climbing a ladder, and that's really exciting to go through.
Joe Bagan, I wanted to thank you so much for being on the podcast. I really appreciated all of the in-depth discussion that you gave us. As I've said before, I find it really interesting, the entrepreneurial spirit in life sciences, and watching a lot of you grow and hearing your stories hopefully is an inspirational thing for our listeners as well. So thank you so much, Joe, for being on. I greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Don. I enjoyed our time together. Thanks a bunch.
Thank you for listening to Life Science Success. For complete details about this podcast, including show notes, how to get in touch with guests, and more episodes, please visit www.lifesciencesuccess.com. If there's someone you'd like for us to invite to the show as a guest, please let me know by sending me a message at the podcast website. Please click subscribe on your favorite podcast app, share the podcast, or tell a friend about it. And last but not least, rate the podcast. Thank you again.